Northern Nevada has seen unprecedented growth over the last couple years as companies from states like California move to Reno. The Tesla effect has created a wave of other companies of magnitude to select Nevada for its tax incentives and quality of life. Real estate demand and values have reached a near all-time high and are expected to go even higher. The listing and sale of Ranchera and its subsequent development has allowed Brian Drakulich and his companies the opportunity to work with many of the key figures involved with the rapidly changing Northern Nevada economic transformation.
I remember when I first read in the Reno Gazette-Journal that the Ranchera property had been listed. I was pretty excited about that. I read the article and I soon discovered that a good friend of mine, Brian Drakulich, was the listing agent, and I was very happy for him. Later, after I ran for office and became the Washoe County Assessor, Brian came into our office after the sale and gave us a detailed report on the intricacies of that sale, how parcels had been put together and sold and resold and finally reassembled as one piece, and how he sold that. When he shared that information with us, I think it was quite helpful for the taxpayer. It gave us a good picture of what the value really was there on that property, and probably saved the buyer some tax consequences. Later, after that, Brian invited my staff and gave us a tour. He took us on a tour of the Ranchera property before the development started. So we got a chance to see a historic property as it was leaving a ranch site and soon would become a multifamily or a multi-use property with some commercial and residential. So we got to see that the end of an old era and the beginning of a new era when that property changed hands and started development.
Well, I got a call from a friend of mine that he says, you know, you need somebody who's honest, has integrity. I think the whole thing happened when I was looking for a shop, for an area for a shop, and met Brian that day. It's been a long time since I met anybody with that kind of integrity. I thought Brian might be the right guy to sell a ranch, and I think the first day I met with him, and because of a long history of meeting the wrong people, he walked in the door, and first thing I said to him was, I don't sign any contracts at all. He needed to see the ranch. He needed to see it thoroughly, and it took hours. I pretty much showed him every detail. It took some time to find a buyer, and it had to be the right buyer. I wasn't gonna go along with someone who was gonna wipe the whole thing out and do a heavy density project. I wanted someone there that would honor what the ranch was. It's not, you know, it wasn't only my family who was involved in the ranch. The history of the property dates back to the 1800s.
So interesting day. My first meeting with John, and I think we spent about 4 hours on the porch. I thought it'd be about 4 minutes. Brian Drakulich, if you looked in the Webster Dictionary under the word tenacity, you'd see Brian Drakulich's face. The man has the patience of Job. My first encounter with Brian was probably one of the biggest transactions of his life, probably one of the biggest of mine. It's probably the biggest hood ornament for our company. I can't tell you that I've had a more difficult escrow in my life. I think I went 8 months without a contract in place, and John didn't want to hear. John only wanted to hear the deal one time, and then he just wanted to get to know me. I think he had several offers from people from all over the world, but he really wanted to know that we were going to keep the integrity of the ranch. And as many times as I picked up the phone and raised my voice at Brian was there to soothe my nerves that he was going to get it done.
One of the transactions that we worked together on was a very complex, large planned unit development located, a highly desirable piece of property located in the city of Reno. Every real estate professional and broker wanted to work on it. Every developer wanted to acquire parts of it. Brian represented the seller, whose family had owned the property for 2 generations. He honestly is the only, not broker, not lawyer, not developer, but only professional who I know who could have held that transaction together and accomplished it in the way he did. And he created a win-win situation for the ultimate developer of the property, who's making it an iconic Reno master plan. He represented zealously the seller of the property, a long time, like I said, family who's owned the property for generations. And he also worked closely with several of the other peripheral sellers and buyers as well to keep the transaction and hold it together for over 3 years. There's nobody I know who could have done a better job.
On the commercial side, I did a deal with him where it took over a year to complete the deal, and there was a lot of persistence, a lot of tenacity on both sides, and ultimately at the end of the day, he brought both the buyer and myself and the seller together in a way that it was a win-win type of situation. I have worked with Brian both on the residential side and the commercial side, done some deals with them on both sides of the coin. And in my opinion, I think the best deal makers are those who look for a win-win for both sides. And Brian definitely approaches every deal that way.
I'll just say we ended up coming to terms. Not really where I wanted to be and not really where he wanted to be. But we ended up making a deal, and that set forth about an 18-month process to close the property. And in that 18 months, there was a ton of things that went wrong, could have gone wrong. There were a lot of issues like that Brian helped push through. There were some entitlement issues. There were a lot of things that went on, and really, if he hadn't dug in and stayed with it, the sale probably would have failed.
The other word besides tenacity is integrity. The man has tremendous integrity. How he was able to juggle and balance someone like me and someone like John, who are 2 different people, obviously somewhat of the same goals, but how Brian was able to keep the glue in the deal to get it to closing. I didn't know if this deal was going to close until the day it closed.
Over the years, I've known Brian Drakulich. I've always thought very highly of him. I thought he was very ethical, a very knowledgeable broker, and I was so happy to see him get the opportunity to work on the Harrah's Ranch Harrah property, and I think that they picked probably the best broker in town to work on that property, and it proved to be right. Brian really did a great job putting that whole package together.
I've also worked with Brian on the residential side. He actually sold my house a couple years ago, and he helped me find a luxury property that we live in now. And one of the interesting things about the purchase was he showed me something I didn't want to see. And he kind of is like, oh, you kind of need to see this property. And I knew which property it was. And I was like, I don't want to see that property. That's not the house for me. And I ended up seeing it, fell in love with it, and bought it. And we love the house, absolutely. My wife is super happy. We're all happy. And he just had that perception, and just knowing who I was and knowing what I needed, knowing what I wanted, and led us to the perfect property. So it was a fantastic transaction, and again, he just represented us really well, and he was looking out for our interests.
Also had the good fortune of working with Brian personally on my own residence. Brian videoed it. The video that he and his team put together were first class. It was as if he was selling a property on Lakeshore Drive up at Incline Village, Lake Tahoe. He worked on it tirelessly, obtained multiple offers at a difficult time in the market. We were very happy with how the transaction completed. Also am pleased to work with Brian through my affiliation with Renown Health System. Brian is one of our preferred brokers. Our team, our real estate team, refers new incoming executives and clinicians who are coming into the area to Brian to find homes for them, teach them about the market, and it's due to his integrity, transparency, and unmatched market knowledge.